Ever wonder why these huge, expensive software projects, the ones that are supposed to change the world, just crash and burn so often? It's a question that keeps a lot of people up at night, from boardrooms to government halls. Today, we're going to dig into one of the biggest tech failures in history to see what lessons are hiding in the wreckage. Let's dive in.
First, let's just get a sense of the scale we're talking about here. This is not a small problem. In 2024 alone, poor software quality is costing businesses a mind-boggling $3.1 trillion. Yeah, that's trillion, with a T. That number is bigger than the entire economy of most countries on Earth. It just goes to show you how much is on the line every single time a developer writes a line of code. And sometimes the cause of these massive losses can be ridiculously small. I mean, get this, a single, misplaced hyphen, one little dash, cost NASA a rocket worth $169 million. It's just a wild reminder that in the world of software, the tiniest details can have absolutely astronomical consequences. It's not always about some grand strategic failure. Sometimes it's just one character out of millions.
So to really understand what goes wrong, we need to look at a specific case. And honestly, there are few failures as big, as expensive, or as full of lessons as the UK's National Programme for IT for their National Health Service, or NPFIT. This is the story of a digital dream that turned into a very, very public nightmare. The vision? Well, the vision was incredible. Just imagine, a single unified electronic health record for every single person in England. We're talking 60 million people. The idea was to connect every hospital, every doctor's office, and finally bring healthcare into the 21st century. It was, at the time, the biggest public sector IT project in history. What could go wrong?
Well, the project kicked off in 2002 with a multi-billion-pound budget, but that dream started to go sour fast. By 2009, the alarm bells were ringing loud and clear. Costs were spiraling out of control, and there were no real benefits to show for it. Just 2 years later, in 2011, the government finally pulled the plug. The final bill? Over £10 billion. That's more than 4 times the original budget.
So what were they even trying to build? Well, the whole thing was broken down into a few key parts. There was the NHS spine, which was a central data hub, a brand new national broadband network, an electronic booking system, and the crown jewel, the whole point of the project, those detailed electronic care records. Now, to be fair, it wasn't a total loss. The spine is actually still used today. But that central promise, the unified patient record, it never happened.
So, was this just a technical failure? Bad code? Not really. The real story, the part that holds the most important lessons for all of us, is about people. It's about what happens when a massive technological change is forced on a complex human system that, didn't ask for it. And right here is the fundamental mistake they made. The project leaders treated this whole thing like a purely technical problem, something engineers could just solve from an office somewhere. But it wasn't. In reality, it was an adaptive change. It required the people on the front lines, the doctors, the nurses, to learn completely new ways of working. And that's where the whole house of cards started to wobble. This quote from a hospital executive just nails the feeling on the ground. Clinicians felt like they were losing control. They already had systems that, sure, weren't perfect, but they were customized for what they needed. This new, one-size-fits-all national system just felt like a huge step backward, an order from on high that totally ignored their expertise. And here's the view from the ground floor. Can you imagine being a doctor or a nurse, already overworked, and being told you have to deal with yet another IT project that is probably not going to work? There was this deep sense of exhaustion and skepticism. Without the buy-in from the people who actually had to use the system every day, the project was basically doomed before the first server was even turned on. So at the end of the day, the project's failure was deeply sociocultural. The schedules were a fantasy, communication was terrible, and the people who actually had to use the system couldn't see how it would help them in the short term. The challenges of culture and human behavior turned out to be just as massive as any technical problem. Okay, so the NPFIT was a massive cautionary tale, but what are the universal lessons we can pull from all this? Let's zoom out a bit and look at some key ideas that apply to pretty much any large-scale IT project. First, we have to understand something called the productivity paradox. It's a really interesting concept. It basically says that when you pour billions into new technology, you expect instant improvements in productivity, right? but they don't show up. Why? Because it takes a long, long time. We're talking a decade or more for a whole organization to truly adapt and change the way it works to get the real benefits. Patience is key. And this contrast is just perfect. It shows the two different ways technology can be adopted. While that centralized, top-down NP-Fit was failing spectacularly in hospitals, a quiet success story was happening in local doctors' offices. Their move to digital was a huge win because it was the total opposite of the big project. It was bottom-up, it started with enthusiasts, and it focused on solving real, local problems first. And this success wasn't some big bang change. Look at this chart. It started tiny back in the 80s with just a few subsidized practices. It grew steadily through the 90s, and only after it had proven its value did it get full government funding, which led to almost 100% adoption. It was an evolution, not a revolution. So the lesson here isn't that we should be afraid of big projects. It's that we need a much smarter, more structured, and more human way of building them. Let's talk about the modern blueprint for how to actually get this right. The answer lies in a structured process that successful software teams use everywhere: the Software Development Lifecycle, or SDLC. Now, this isn't just some corporate buzzword. It's a proven framework that builds in the very things the NFIT ignored, like careful planning, user feedback, and tons of testing. It's the perfect antidote to that top-down, big bang approach that failed so badly. A modern SDLC breaks the whole process into these clear, manageable phases. You start with planning and really understanding what users need, because if you don't, you just build the wrong thing. Then you design, then you code, and then you test like crazy, because finding a bug at this stage is 100 times cheaper than fixing it after launch. Only then do you deploy and plan for ongoing support. It's a logical flow that builds quality in at every single step. And this whole process is guided by a few core principles. First is shift left, which is just a fancy way of saying find problems early when they're cheap and easy to fix. Next, engage your users from day one. That is the absolute key lesson from the NHS failure. Plan for growth, build in security from the start, and maybe most importantly, embrace iteration. Don't try to do everything at once. Release in small, manageable pieces that deliver real value, just like those successful doctors' offices did. So in the end, we come back to the most important point of all. These giant tech projects, they're never really about the technology. They're about changing the way people live and work. And the 10 billion pound question that hangs over every single new project is this: after all these expensive failures, are we finally learning to put the people first?